Friday night and I'm getting ready to go to the casino with my friends and have a good little evening. So I want to knock this out because I know I won't feel up to it later. Hopefully I won't feel up to it if I have fun, right? So I want to talk about IGF-1. I did another video when I talked about that peptide thing and what are these peptides all about. And basically peptides are amino acids that form long chains and do all sorts of crazy neat things and form hormones and all sorts of different things in the body. And as I've done more and more research on peptides, it's kind of like, you know, like on your phone where there's an app for that, there's kind of a peptide for that, which is super cool. So basically, a peptide is basically just like these long chains of amino acids kind of stuck together. And I did a video on IGF-1, which is a hormone, which is made of peptides, which activates metabolically active tissue. So if you're struggling to lose weight or increase your muscle mass, or if you just are struggling to lose weight, burn your metabolic tissue, then you might have an IGF-1 deficiency. We actually have a lab test that we can do for that. So if you want to come see me, we can do a blood test and see if you're deficient, because that could be the problem. Now, testosterone will actually help make the muscles bigger, but it won't actually help form new muscle, which is super cool because that's sort of a revolutionary thing when you're trying to build muscle. And you know, it's not for women, it's not about bulking up and looking like, you know, a big bodybuilder. It's just about being toned and feeling good in the skin that you're in. And so I have a ton of patients who are now stepping into this peptide game, and it is a freaking game changer. It's very exciting. So I want to talk about IGF-1 because of its effect on metabolically active tissue and how it's stimulated by growth hormone, or you can take it as a peptide. Now, one of the downsides is that you can't really take these peptides orally because it gets destroyed by the stomach acid. I think eventually they will come up with different delivery routes, and maybe they already have, maybe I'm not aware, so inbox me if you know. But right now, injectable is the only way, and everybody's a little bit PTSD from getting vaccinations or something from a nasty, mean nurse when they were little, and it would hurt, or you got a tetanus shot and it hurt for days. So, you know, once you let your fear of needles go and you realize that it's really no more than a mosquito bite if you do it right. So I usually teach people to do it on the stomach where the nerve receptors are very lessened, and, you know, squeezing, tapping, things that you can do to take the fear and the anxiety out, because there's really not many nerve receptors in the stomach. So it's easy. And if you use an insulin sized needle, it's like an acupuncture sized needle. So if you've ever had acupuncture, you really don't feel it when they stick the needles in. I mean, every once in a while you might feel a little sting, but you really don't feel an acupuncture sized needle. So that's kind of my argument for opening your mind to these peptides. But I also want to tell you on the front end so that you don't get the end and go, oh crap, it's an injectable. I'm not going to do that. You just feel a little duped. So I'm going to make sure I'm recording. Okay, cool. So there are differences in the peptides, and the websites that I usually recommend people to get their peptides from differ just a little bit. So you want to make sure that you get the right stuff. So if you're going to get one of the insulin-like growth factors, IGF-1, which it stands for insulin-like growth factor. And what that means is it acts like growth hormone in the body. And so I'm gonna share with you just a little bit about basically the growth hormone pitfalls. I've had a lot of patients who have been bodybuilders that come to me basically just to check their lab work and make sure it's not affecting their liver or their kidneys, and that everything's, you know, above board. And unfortunately, a lot of those things they've had to get on the black market because doctors won't prescribe these things or aren't educated enough for metabolic profiling, for physiologic profiling, for helping people look as fit and trimmed, and, you know, using the strategy that we have in a safe way. They just aren't educated enough. We're just kind of taught in the pharmaceutical, so we just don't know enough. But one of the problems with growth hormone is that it doesn't incorporate sulfate into the cartilage. Now, the cartilage is what holds the ligaments and tendons and everything to the bone. And so if you basically don't incorporate sulfate into the cartilage, you'll start to have problems. And I've known people who've had carpal tunnel syndrome, who've gotten like these big overgrown jaws, you know, all the side effects, fluid retention, all these other side effects. and they're not making the muscle and they're not getting the gains that they want with growth hormone. It's terribly expensive. The DEA regulates it very tightly. It's a I think what they call a class 1A felony charge if you get caught. So it's a really big deal to bootleg or black market growth hormone. So the DEA regulates doctors really tightly on it. You have to prove that you have a growth hormone deficiency, like if you're a kid that's not growing. So growth hormone has had many pitfalls, and that's why, because it doesn't incorporate the sulfa. But this polypeptide IGF-1 does. And you'll see IGF-1 and you'll see LR3, which is a long R3. And the long R3 basically just extends it a little bit more. So on this polypeptide chain, the R is right here and it extends it here. So that makes it more possible to fit into the hormone link that it has to have to form that. So it only needs a few more amino acids to attach on. And it also is more potent, and there's less competition for the receptor sites because of this extra chain in here. And it also increases the half-life to 20 to 30 hours. And people who take growth hormone know that you only have a 2 to 3 hour half-life of growth hormone. So you have to dose it like 3 to 5 times a day to even get close to the effects that you can with the IGFs. Little nerdy science, it's a polypeptide chain of 83 amino acids, and the long R3 actually has this extra little chain on it. So that makes it more effective, more potent, less competition, and increases the half-life. And one of the interesting things that is produced in response to growth hormone, and growth hormone from the pituitary gland naturally goes down with age and declines with age. So if you don't have enough growth hormone, you're not going to stimulate your IGF-1. And so we see a lot of IGF-1 deficiencies. And growth hormone actually, and the IGF-1 can actually increase cellular activity and increase muscle growth. It makes you more sensitive to insulin. So if you're gaining weight because you have insulin resistance, or the genetic predisposition to diabetes or pre-diabetes, it'll make your insulin more sensitive, so you will lose weight easier even if you have an insulin problem, and you can probably tolerate more carbs, right? So that's good news. That's a cheat. Hafren and I are always talking about cheats. We just ate at Denny's yesterday and had this big pancake with strawberries and stuff on it. So I get to do that every once in a while because I know how to keep my insulin at bay, which is super cool. Also, it actually increases the number of muscle cells. Now, if you follow my videos, you know that I've said that we're born with all the fat we're ever going to have. We're also born with all the muscle we're ever going to have. So the interesting thing about this is this actually increases the number of cells in the muscle. And the way that it does that is it increases your protein production, and it actually augments your RNA. So actually the DNA is the copy is the RNA, and it actually increases, and it tells that RNA to make more muscle protein. And it also decreases your protein degradation, so you don't break down protein as fast, so muscle comes on faster. And it has enlarged amino acid and transporting in the cells. So within the cells, it actually helps the amino acids attach on even easier. So what it does is it actually hypertrophies, or it splits the muscle fiber and allows more muscle cells to double. So this is kind of that's where the growth hormone related thing comes in, is we normally stop growing and stop making new cells as we get to a certain point. This actually pushes the limit on what we can do to form new muscle cells. And like I said, there's a peptide for everything. This is the peptide for that. So if you want a peptide for decreasing your fat cells or destroying fat cells, there's an app for that. There's a peptide for that. I mean, wink, wink. And it's just the coolest thing. So for wrinkles, for anything that you have, even for tanning, and I've stopped using my melanotan, but there's a peptide for melanocytes for tanning you. I had a great tan this summer, and I used the melanotan. So this is super cool. I'm having patients get amazing results. They usually use about 20 to 120 micrograms a day, depending on body weight. They usually use it for about 50 days or a little over a month, and then you cycle off of it, but some places say that you don't have to cycle off of it. But everything I've seen, usually you cycle off for a month, so on a month, off a month, so, and then you do about 3 months and kind of reassess your IGF-1 levels, and then we can decide where you're at. And in the meanwhile, we fix your other hormones, or not fix them, but balance your other hormones, your testosterone, so that you have the energy, your thyroid, so that you have the energy to go to the gym and do this muscle sculpting. But even if you don't go to the gym, it's actually going to increase muscle, which decreases fat, right? So people who start IGF-1 will actually gain around 2 to 5 pounds of muscle over the time that they're using this, not fat. So, you know, you have to, if you get on the scales, you can't watch that and go, oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight, because you're actually gaining muscle, but it makes you look more defined and just makes you feel more confident, right? Because that's the cool thing. And muscle actually burns fat for you. So the more muscle you have, the more fat you'll burn, the more metabolically active tissue, because muscle is metabolically active tissue, and the more weight you'll lose. So it's kind of my little cheat, if you will. So I hope this was entertaining, educating, empowering. If you need help with this, because it does come as a powder, and you'll need some help probably reconstituting it and doing the math. I hate the math. I was just helping my husband figure the math out this morning on his 1 milligram vial, and I had to do conversions and kind of go back to my pharmacy training, and but I'll help you. I'll be happy to help you with that, because it's super cool and exciting. So come see me if you want. We can check your levels and see if this would benefit you. Okay, off to this casino and start my weekend, my Friday night. I love y'all very much. Have a great, blessed, wonderful weekend, and be safe, and just be kind to each other and all that wonderful stuff. See you later. Mwah.